Yesterday, Gary Gensler, the chairman of the SEC, had a marathon hearing on Capitol Hill. Capitol Hill. He was in a House Financial Service. Sorry, can't talk. He was in a House Financial Services Committee hearing, and he got peppered with a ton of questions on crypto. Kind of revealed this lingering fascination among U.S. lawmakers around the regulation of crypto and recent steps by the SEC to rein in the crypto industry within the United States. The headline here was, "Hey, the ban's not up to us; it's up to Congress; it's up to the lawmakers." And I think the markets saw that positively and could be responding in turn. Should we assume that that is the impetus for the recent surge in Bitcoin's price? But a lot was shared here beyond just that top line takeaway. There was all sorts of stuff about the regulation of exchanges, about stable coins, all sorts of stuff that lawmakers on Capitol Hill asked Mr. Gensler, and he offered some very revealing comments in return. So I'm gonna throw this to Naomi. Actually, I mean, I think this captivated a lot of interest yesterday. Our colleague Cheyenne was able to break down some of what was said. What stood out to you from this hearing? Beyond the no ban comments, was there anything that caught your eye?
I mean, it's interesting that they're talking about not banning it. It's like, well, okay, because it's not your purview. Of course, the SEC wouldn't be banning this. Their job is to make sure there's transparency and the even playing field is not up to them to decide, winners and losers in terms of which financial products should be banned or not. But this isn't the first time that a government department has mentioned banning or not banning, rather, when it isn't even their purview. We've had the Federal Reserve mention a couple of weeks ago, I think, we're not going to ban it. It's like, okay, but yeah, we know, this is up to Congress. So it's interesting. There's a lot of rhetoric about not banning it. So like, does this mean that someone's about to put forward a bill into Congress about banning it? Like, is this what this is leading to? Because it all sounded very strange to me. I have some other thoughts as well, but just on that note, Zach, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, the Congress people, they want to know. So this was in response to a direct question from Representative Ted Budd, who is a Republican from North Carolina. He said, so reiterating a question, so no bans that you're interested in implementing via the SEC, as China has done, really to funnel everyone through their own digital currency, bringing up, alluding obviously to central bank digital currencies and talk out of Fed Chair Jerome Powell that something like that may be in the works for the U.S. So it was in response to that direct question in which Gensler said, no, quote, that would be up to Congress. So, top of mind, the news, especially as it relates to China and Bitcoin and its recent crackdown, seems to have filtered to some of the lawmakers on Capitol Hill, at least in this House committee. And Gensler was asked for his thoughts on the matter directly. So it's interesting to see this question and answer format really yielding some interesting takeaways that reveal some of the thinking behind a key force in the U.S. regulatory scene. Will, I saw your hand up, and then we'll kick it back up to Naomi for some other thoughts.
I want to jump back onto what Naomi was saying, that all these institutions were asking if they're going to ban Bitcoin don't have the ability to do it. It's not in their legal purview to say, oh, you can ban this or ban that. That private property exists and you can't just ban code. That's also free speech. So it's interesting to see that question pop up. It's also interesting to see how that has like a market response. It's very clear that Bitcoin went up a lot today. And the only thing I can kind of think about is, well, a lot of people saw this headline and said, oh, the US is taking a more positive stance and they won't ban Bitcoin. It kind of crumbles my faith a little bit. Yeah, I know. Don't take that fully in there. But to a degree, you can say like there's some correlation there. And you talk about like, if you look at the picture writ large, you're wondering like, do that many people believe that Congress can just create a bill or the SEC can just create a regulation that would wipe something off the map like Bitcoin, which is just a digital currency? I understand that securities laws interact a little bit differently, and that would get more into the token questions, and that would be under SEC purview. But just looking at the larger picture, it just seems like there's a lot of confusion over what our government is able to do with digital currencies. Naomi, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, I did see Jen with her hand up as well, so I'll throw it to her first. Off to you, Jen.
Okay. Well, it's interesting just reading the transcript of what happened yesterday because I find that Gary Gensler always is presenting problems, and I hate to be the person that says this, but no solution. So it's like the problem with stablecoins is this, and it needs to be regulated. The problem with DeFi is this, and it needs to be regulated. And yesterday we spoke about Hester Peirce's solution, and that never comes up. And so while I was reading this, I was thinking about the safe harbor proposal and how it would bring so much clarity to the inner workings of the products that we're thinking about. And maybe we don't end up at the result that Hester Peirce predicts, but I think we'll end up in a place where we have so much more clarity, and maybe the end result is very different than all of us are thinking. But I think it would be such a great starting place, and I am so upset that it didn't come up yesterday. But Naomi, I'll pass it back up to you.
Yeah, absolutely second that. I will mention some other things that Gary brought up. He talks again about stablecoins as this systemic risk to the economy, and we can dig into that. But yes, of course, because when they say, it's a systemic risk, like to what system is this a risk? It's to the status quo. It's to this, established financial system that, yes, Bitcoin is disrupting majorly. So it's not like, it just seems like this platitude, like it's a systemic risk. It's like, yes, and the government is really fighting against it, and people who want financial sovereignty are really fighting for it, right? And the other thing he brought up, I'll just mention quickly, is about DeFi. He once again reiterated that we are going to be trying to regulate DeFi. He was talking about the fact that we have these, centralized protocols. They don't take custody in the same way, but he thinks that this could be a place that we could get the maximum amount of public policy, which again is crazy because, as Will brought up, code is free speech, right? So are they going to be starting to regulate developers who write these platforms, when they're not even taking custody of funds? They're not money transmitters. They're not under the purview of a lot of these, financial regulatory institutions. So are they going to start cracking down on coders now? There's a lot of big question marks brought up from this hearing. But Zach, I'll throw it to you for final thoughts before we go on to the next one.
Yeah, really bearish remarks, I think, on DeFi and stablecoins, especially right on the heels of CoinDesk reporting that, that Circle USDC issuer had been hit with an investigative subpoena. But in defense of rational markets theory, sometimes I'm not a huge fan of that. He did have interesting remarks on Bitcoin in response to a question. He said, quote, Bitcoin is a highly speculative asset, but it is a store of value that people wish to invest in as some would invest in gold. So somewhat of a tepid endorsement. So maybe the market saw that as a signal and acted in turn. But very interesting to see this unfold. Continues to be a major storyline that we're watching.